Also, fun fact, if you don't have hard copies of Jack McCoy's movies, greenroomsurfmovies.com or jackmccoy.com. I spent most of my day on that. He's got like a ton of fun free clips as well, like a shitload of Derek Hine footage. It's incredible. And that kind of brings us to today's episode, Aloha Friday, with Jack McCoy Aloha. That works out well. But before we get into it, a little spoken word from Jack McCoy himself. A poem he wrote. Come on, babe. That you're gonna meet me at the Green Iguana. Open doors, walk right in. I got you right under my skin. You see a cloud, I see a rainbow. We're both looking out the same window. See the clouds drifting by, full moon horizon with the tide. Jack McCoy. That's literally written inside Green Iguana. I watched it the other day. I was so blown away. It's the theme song of the movie. But who's doing that? Ain't nobody writing poetry anymore in their frickin' surf movies. This dude is iconic. So it is my unique pleasure to be able to just straight up FaceTime a lord of core surfing. But before I do, I'm going to make sure that I've learned a lot on this show. I have to actually do the do not disturb method because sometimes people get all fired up and they text and then... Shoots, how do I do that though? Hopefully I can figure that out just now. Do not disturb. That's pretty easy. Okay, so we're on there. Anything else I wanted to speak on? We're going to take a break this weekend and we're going to see how next week goes. And that list again, as we were referencing it for people to know, the big fish in the water to finish out what the Paradise Awareness Outreach was, is Andrew Kidman's film Litmus with Wayne Lynch, Herbie and Dibby Fletcher talking about Astrodeck movies and just being legends in general. Greg McGilvery, I haven't been able to get in touch with, but that would be so unreal. 5 Summer Stories, of course. And then today is Jack McCoy. So we got a good thing going. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking. It just comes to that point where we just stop. Okay. Okay. So one time he called me on WhatsApp, and then one time he called me on FaceTime, so we're just going to hit him on a FaceTime because that's fun. He said he was going to be out in the yard cutting another tree, so we'll just see. But yes, okay, we got him.
Hey!
Yes, sir!
Aloha, are we on?
We're on right now. Look at us. Here, I'm gonna get.
I literally just walked in the door. For those who are listening, I'm so excited about doing this. I called Tanner about half an hour ago, all ready to go, and he said, "You got a half an hour." So I jumped back on my tractor.
Yes.
And went back down to the creek where we're doing some clearing. We have 40 acres here of forest in a national park called Yarrahapini, which is a Aboriginal word for much food. So it's quite fitting with our veggie garden over there. But we were down there cutting some trees and also pulling some stumps out of the creek. Here's our new veggie garden.
Oh, what kind of veggies are you guys got in there?
Winter things. We're doing potatoes and carrots and,
Yes.
I'm not really in charge of what's been planted. My wife and daughter doing that. A little cottage here, tacked onto the side of quite a big shed. We've had this property for about close to 30 years now.
Oh.
Of course, we have Tahitian limes.
Wow. I didn't know you'd been there for 30 years. That's insane.
Well, we've had this property for that long.
Okay.
It's mostly been used as a sort of a holiday house, and there's really good surf within an hour in either direction, north or south here. Oh, here's a classic. Don't tell anybody I pinched this.
Oh my
I
God.
didn't pinch it, but a friend of mine.
Dude, that's a man cave right there. Where are we?
We're in my shed.
Yes. So what'd you pinch? Oh, okay. What do we got?
I'm not going to show it to you.
Mum's the word. It's too hot.
I have to turn it this way.
There we go.
Anyway.
Jack, we're getting
Anyway.
the service is a little bit tough in the shed there.
I've got a little room here where my wife and I have a little scene. I've got my which way do I point?
Either if you can put it on that side, Jack, that would be.
Looking at my slide. Are you looking at my slide box here?
Let's see here, Jack. Can you hold the phone on a horizontal? Can you hold it? Like blows the image up bigger. Jack, are you there?
Here. Yeah, I'll do it this way. So that's my light box.
Oh, rad.
Where I've been working on some slides. Here's a picture I took of Michael back in the day hanging on the wall.
Is that MP right there? Oh my goodness.
MP.
What? This is unreal.
He signed it for me.
Holy cow.
Anyway.
That's unreal.
And, yeah.
Hey, well, thank you, Jack, for taking the time and allowing us to kind of catch up and talk some of your surf movies. We talked a couple days ago. They have had the most profound effect on my life. So this for me is a huge day. So thank you so much.
Well, it's a real honor and pleasure for me.
I had to go through after you said, hey, write down all your questions. I went and watched as many as I possibly could. And I came up with a ton of questions, but I made like almost 70 question lists, but then I went back through and we brought it back to those sequences that you said. Dude, it's just crazy, Jack. Like the movies have such stories in them and the way the music is and the little acting scenes, they're so dense with like culture and fiber. I love it.
Well, when I started making surfing films, my first movie was a Bruce Brown film. And that lit the torch. Here was a guy who inspired me to what I call sharing the stove.
Yes.
And so my first couple of movies, my feature films, were, Storm Riders and Tubular Swells, pretty much using the same formula the original surf movie makers made, which was telling a story, traveling to places, and, I didn't have the humor that Bruce Brown did, but we had, little scenes in our movies that we tried to make funny in that. One of the things that was a breakout movie for me was a little film called A Day in the Life of Wayne Lynch, where I actually got into the personality of the person. And I made that was a little short 15-minute movie. And what used to happen was you'd make your film, your feature, and you'd show it around physically. You'd have to take a projector and speakers and a screen and set it up and sell the tickets and turn the projector on and turn out the lights, blah, blah, blah.
One-man show.
And well, that's the way the original surf movies were. And but I wanted to make a film that actually had personality. And so what you do is the next year as a rerun to try and get people to come back, and what you get 2 years out of income of one movie, you would make a short film to go with it. So that you would promote come see Tubular Swells Plus.
Oh.
The Life of Wayne Lynch. So that was the draw card to bring people in the second time.
That's so interesting.
And yeah, so that was the standard fare of what you kind of did. And then with my next feature film, which is called Storm Riders, that too followed pretty much the same formula, narrator telling you where we are and what's happening. And to bring them back in, I made a movie called Cogs Island. And that was the first time again to try to have a personality. And what happened was I was an owner of Quicksilver at the time, and the owner says, I found this kid named Kong, and he reckons he's going to be a world champion. I want you to make a movie of him. And I went, Kong? You know, the imagination boggled.
King Kong? Yeah.
So I just sort of came up with this idea with the guy who taught me everything, my editor from Tubular Swells and Storm Riders, a guy named David Lowry, was a great filmmaker, and he pretty much taught me everything. So, but he had a really dry sense of humor. And so we made this little movie about Gary Elkerton, and it was to announce that Quicksilver had signed this new kid named Kong. And so I wanted to have a couple of people with him, so I had Rabbit and Chappie Jennings. And they go on this little adventure. And I had a weak little story, you know. They're going to, Chappie and Rabbit, to go pick up Kong, and they're going to go surfing, and to get, you know, before they pick him up, they go into the magic waterfall and transform it and that, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it was pretty... For America, I mean, it was the biggest hit ever in Australia. Everybody got it, you know. But I took it to America, and I remember we had a promotional party at someone's barbecue and house, and the reaction wasn't anything like what I expected. You know, everyone's kind of standing there, you know. And I'm going, oh, what's going on? So anyway, the next day, the guy goes, we can't show this movie here. And I go, why? He says, because of the reference of going under the magic waterfall and then having a psychedelic sequence, everyone thinks you're on an acid trip. And then you've got the kids running out of the store going, run! You know, they go into a store, they go to the Shark Bite Cafe, they go in, and in the true tradition of surfers everywhere, I go, run! You know, and they run out this thing, and they thought, we're teaching kids how to steal. And then we had a scene of Chappie standing on the bonnet of a car playing the air guitar while they're driving through a forest. You know, it was just a zany, the other thing was,
I love this.
And this was pure me, you know. I was, you know, indulging in a lot of herb at the time, and we had these real cheesy. They weren't cream puffs. In America, you have things with filling. They were just sort of like an Australian bun. And I just stuck it on the tree, and I said, Rabbit, I want you to feed Kong the bun, you know. And he goes, okay. So he's sitting there, and Kong comes, and I did a time lapse where he eats it, and then he burps, and then we say, Rabbit finds a magic cream puff tree.
Oh yeah.
and then the narrator goes, and it only takes one puff for Kong to have a final assault on the sea. You know, there was just little dry windows that were. So anyway, Bad Boy Jack lives up to his reputation in America, so they didn't show it. Anyway, that was, you know, how I started my movies. And we also distributed other people's films here. I had a partner, Dick Hool, that I made both those movies with.
Yeah.
My dearest friend and great guy. And then I kind of, you know, wanted to do something a little bit different. And I had the opportunity to go live in America with a friend of mine who had a big celebrity bed and breakfast in Hollywood. And before I left, I was recognized in the film industry here in Australia as a surf filmmaker. And I'd go to parties and with, all the hype, Australia's got a lot of a great film industry. And I'm there with my heroes and peers. And they go, "Oh, Jack, what do you do?" I go, "I make documentaries." "Oh, that's great. What sort of documentaries?" "Oh, I make surfing movies." And they go, "Oh."
Record scratch.
And I was a surf movie. I wasn't a movie maker. So anyway, to make a long story short, this friend of mine had a celebrity bed and breakfast in Hollywood. And I lived there for 3 years, and everyone from Jack Nicholson down would come and hang at their house. And big Hollywood mansion off of top of La Cienega and Sunset. And, I'd have artists, I don't want to say who, but there were some really amazing artists, and they'd go, I'd just come back from G-Land and made this little film called Surf Hits, and I'm showing them the footage, I'm telling them about the jungle, and I'm showing them my water shots, and I'd swim out and do this,
yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And they're going, "Oh my God, what an artist you are."
Totally.
You're an amazing artist. And so I spent 3 years in Hollywood getting my confidence of being an artist. And when I came back to Australia, Gordon Merchant hooked me up with, it's one of his first surf trips. He knew I'd finished working with Quicksilver. And he said, "I want you to go film a trip for us." And so I went to the northwest of Australia with his team, which consisted of Munga and Ronnie Burns,
yes,
a few different guys. And I shot the desert sequence that's in Bunyip Dreaming.
Okay.
And I showed him the footage, and he said, go on another trip. And so I did like 5 trips, and he gave me just enough money to make a movie for him. And I ended up putting like 10 grand of my own money in it because I wanted to make it just right. And he took it to America, virtually dripping wet from the sound mix, to a trade show. Bob Hurley was there. They wheeled their VHS and TV up to the room at their hotel. They watched it 5 times, and he goes, "We want you to start the next one." And that was the start of, the Green Iguana. And I'd just come from a trip to, which at the time I never told anybody, but it was in Sumba. And I'd done a trip before with the owner when he was just setting up the place. And I said, "I want to take Aki to this left,
Yeah.
And so the first trip that I did for the Green Iguana was taking Aki and Sonny, my wife, my new 6-month-old son, to Sumba. And it was like going back in time. It was prehistoric. The people were, all getting around on horses and back then.
Jack, are you there? Okay.
Say again?
Sorry, you cut out. We didn't get the audio on that.
Oh, on what? Where'd we leave off?
Well, we were just talking about when you arrived there. You said it was prehistoric.
Yeah, well, it was. This is an island in eastern Tenegra back in the late 80s, and, they were still riding around on horseback, and, they'd have tribal battles, and they'd hack each other up, and, there was some weird stuff going on there at the time. But anyway, it had this really good left, and I always went somewhere back in those days before surf reports and wouldn't leave until I actually got what I came for. However, in the meantime, when the surf was a little bit onshore or whatever, I would film as insurance so that I at least had something. So with the green iguana, I came up with that sequence of Aki that was called Sunset Dreaming in that particular film.
Yeah.
And it was there in Simba. And
how was
it's really some of the best footage that I've ever shot of Aki, I think.
How was Aki to work with? Because you must have done the same stuff that you did with Rabbit to ask him to do a lot of this acting. Like I told you when I first met Aki, well, because I have twin brothers, of course, so I thought Rocky legitimately could be around, but like it's this whole skit the whole time, and like, how is Aki to work with?
Well, you know, I was at Bell's Beach around 1982 when he first came down to Bell's, and I was commentating. And it was before the contest, and the surf was nuts, and everyone was out there. And there was this one kid out there. This is like back in the, you know, you got to be cool. You don't wear colored wetsuits. And this guy turns up with this fluoro green. I'm not talking dark fluoro green, I'm talking yellow fluoro green wetsuit, steamer. And he was literally going nuts. And I got it from that point on. I knew this kid was like amazing. And I'd see him around, but I never really connected with him because I was a bit older and I was working with Quicksilver, and it was a different sort of scene, you know, and I didn't do much of the tour. But I knew who he was. And then one year in late 89, Gordon asked me, because he knew I'd finished working with Quicksilver, he goes, "Hey, will you make me some commercials?" And I said, yeah. So I made him 6 commercials, and one of them featured Aki. And I spent a bit of time with him because he was living at a friend of mine's house. And we started hanging out a little bit. And then, when I did that first trip to the Northwest, I had such a good trip, and the footage was so good. Gordon said, "I want you to go up there again with Aki to that same place." And so that was the first trip that we actually did and worked together, was in the Bunyip Dreaming, a sequence called Solo Dream.
Okay, that's where he's coming out of the tent and his face is just ripping through the little tent hole.
So there's a story there, right? Yeah, that was the idea, that, you know, he wakes up in the morning and he looks out of his tent and his eyes are all blurry and everything. That had nothing to do with waking up, you know. That was wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I love it.
And he's literally, you know,
yeah.
coming out of the tent. But that was shot at sunset. You know,
yes.
That was an afternoon sunset that I'd shot him. I said, "Just come out of the tent." And he comes out and he...
Oh my gosh.
We had a really, really good time, you know. And when we went to... When the success of Bunyip allowed me to go to Simba, like I said, and I took he and Sonny. And my wife and Sonny lasted for 2 weeks before they had to get out of there. You know, like there were sandflies, and it wasn't that, you know, the place wasn't built yet. It was really rough. But again, not leaving until I knew I was going to get something. Ak and I stayed. And we had like 10 days of the most fun. We went fishing one day to try and feed all the workers, because they would come down and look at it. They're lucky, and we're sitting there with like fish, salads, and everything, you know. And I said to the guy who was doing the cook, I said, "What are they eating?" He says, "Oh, they're really jealous of the fish you're getting." Now, I'm a water cameraman. I've got this karma thing about not fishing or spearing or killing fish, because when I'm out there along the reef at dinner time, I don't want to have Uncle Harry feel that I might have taken one of his bloody kids, you know.
The karma
So I
boomerang.
never did fishing, I spearfished and fished when I was a kid in Hawaii, but I stopped as a karma thing as a water photographer. I just didn't want...
That makes sense.
idiosyncrasy to some extent. But the point is that I wasn't a fisher. You know, and I went, okay. So we got this little Zodiac, and we go out this one late afternoon, and we hooked onto this giant Spanish mackerel. Must have been about, 5 foot long. We had a 11-foot Zodiac. We get the thing to the side of the boat. And he says, "What do I do?" I said, "Just pull it into the boat." Rams in this little tiny thing, and it's like this, 100-pound fish is going nuts. And first thing it does is take a bite out of one of the hulls of the Zodiac, and it goes, and you've got 2 grown men standing in the back of the one hull that's still inflated by the motor in each other's arms, going, "What do we do? What do we do?" And long story short, we had a great week there for 10 days, like I said, and then on about the 10th day, we woke up, and it was just magic. And I did what I usually do. I shot everything from the land and the water when I did my sequences, but I would start in one angle, and I would do a wide shot and a zoom in, and then I'd do a medium shot, and then I'd do a close-up. And the whole time I'm waiting for that to finish, and I'm ticking it off in my head, I'm looking for where I'm going to go next.
Uh-huh.
Then I'd run down the beach during a lull, and I'd set up another angle, and I did the same thing: wide shot, medium shot, tight shot, close up if I could. And then I'd tick off the shots, that's a good one. And then I'd run up the beach, and I'd have my 2 water cameras down there on the beach. So when I was finished, I'd run to where the cameras were, I'd shoot a couple shots from that angle, and then I'd swim out. And I'd shoot 2 high-speed rolls, which I'd get about 6 shots out of 200 feet, and then I have to come in, get another camera. And it's high speed. This is a World War II Army gun camera, the same sort of camera George Greeno used for his
innermost
shoulder-mounted inside the tube shots for the first time. He stripped his back to... There was no cast iron around it, but I just kept mine and stuck it in the housing and would shoot with it. And, I shot 2 rolls of film.
It's so funny because specifically in that Sumba scene, it's basically, you're like this army of like angles. Like in Sumba, it looks like there's 50 people there. You have even like underwater stuff of Aki, and then the bottom turns shot, and then back to the angle from the land, and then so you're not only working in that day, but then the way it's edited, I don't know, it's so hard to imagine that it's only you. Like, that's so fantastic that you were just that thoughtful about it as well. Set it up, get that angle in your head, check it off, move through, grab the camera. That's cool. That's actually really awesome insight.
Well, that was my play. I worked with storm riders by myself, and Dick worked and made his sequences. I did like Jerry Lopez Rabbit and Wayne Lynch, and he did Thornton Philander, and a couple other things. So we worked by ourselves. But I'd spent my time with my first movie with my editor, David Lowry, this guy, and he's the one who taught me. When you're sitting in the editing room, the last thing you want to do is see 2 shots from the same angle in a sequence. So give me more angles to work with. And so in Bunyip Dreaming, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a sequence of Munga surfing this right, and I wanted to make it look like it was one session, one place, and it's to Concrete Blondes Over Your Shoulder.
Yep. Yes.
If you're watching seriously, you can tell there's a couple different spots, but really that was 5 different spots in 3 states done at different times.
Oh,
when I knew that I had a good shot from the land, I would try to think in my mind, I'm in my editing room, and I want to get a water shot of him going by in front of me. And I'd go out and get it. You know, I'm editing while I'm shooting type of thing.
And the Tahiti section that I asked, or when you asked me my 2 favorite, which was the best, I felt like that was the most awesome quiz, was like, okay, cool. Well, what would be your 2 favorite sequences? And of course, my first one was just like knee jerk, was the Bell's skin section. But the Tahiti one, the way that you shoot that, and it's like he passes over the top of you, he's underneath you, Poncho's in the barrel. It from the water in one session, you're able to tell such a cool story. I mean, that's throughout all your movies, but I really have always appreciated that. So
the skins thing was where Aki was coming back. So what had happened was, right after the Green Iguana, the last shoot of Green Iguana, I spent a year with him, and he'd had dreadlocks. And he came up, we were going to have one more session in the Northwest, and he'd cut his hair. And I go, you've ruined me. My continuity. You know? This is an end sequence, and you've cut your hair.
yeah, like I can't edit this together. I can't put hair on your head in the editing bay.
And yeah, it really messed with me. And so, you know, I shot him anyway, and he ripped. And in the editing room, I'm sitting there with my art director and editor, and I'm going, we have to come up with a specific sequence with this short hair footage. And they go, what do you have in mind? I said, why don't we just make this isn't Aki, it's Aki's brother. And let's call him Rocky.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And so we cut that sequence, and we have so much fun in the editing room making those sort of things. And, you know, there's a whole process, but we cut the little sequence, and we had the little subtitles. And then when we got to the sound mix, we're like, okay, we don't have any voiceover for the thing. We got to have some voice. So we go into the booth, and we started talking at that. Rocky,
Margo!
Yeah, and I'm just sort of watching the footage and trying to think of Italian words at the same time. That's why it sounds so weird. And then my partner comes in and he goes, Rocky, you know. And so we have this little fake Italian conversation. And as you know, in the documentary, we carried Rocky on into the rest of the story. And so to make a long story short, that was the birth of Rocky.
That's so good. Holy cow.
But, you know, I just want to go back to the skins thing, and that was that at the end of that trip, Aki went to Europe and he had sort of his little breakdown. And he went home and he sat on the couch for 3 years. And Gordon Merchant, who owned Billabong and was like a father figure, because Aki's dad had passed when he was pretty young, said, you know, and he paid him, you know, he kept him, he supported him through those whole 3 years. And then he just said to me, what are we going to do with Aki? I said, well, why don't we, you know, nurture him back to a comeback? So Gordon sent him over to my house in Western Australia, where he lived with us for 2 months, and would put him on this. He'd get up every morning and he'd run, you know, and he's eating really good, but it was big, you know, and he didn't want people to see him surfing big, you know. So I'd find a spot where there's nobody, but I'd have to march like, you know, a mile and a half up a beach with my cameras, because I wanted him to think that I thought he was good enough to film. And luckily I filmed a couple of shots, but most of the time I just sat there behind the camera.
As a friend at that point.
Well, yeah, and not really. I never told him I didn't shoot that much, but I pretended like I did to give him confidence that he was good enough to shoot. And I did shoot a couple of shots, which we would use in the movie.
Yeah, you did. I loved it when the scenes where he lifts and throws the rock up on that jetty, and with the audio.
Well, that was once again those little things that we like to create. We call them reenactments. And that was basically about 10 refrigerated cardboard boxes all duct taped together, and then we put a brown hessian around the back of it to make it look like their thing, and then we carted it at the end of the Duran Bar Hill and sort of doing
so good
with it. And then, where he's running and he's really big, I wrapped him in bubble wrap. I wrapped him about this big in bubble wrap, and Billabong made this giant jumper and put over him. And so we're not making it, we're faking it.
Yes, that's so good.
But we're having fun doing it, It was, when I look back and see all that stuff, it's like a souvenir of my life. So anyway, he does start to make this comeback. And the Skins event was really the first competition that he was making a comeback. We also, when he came back, had him do a press release and publicly acknowledge where he'd been, which I thought was really important. Gordon and I thought that he needed to acknowledge and take responsibility that he felt he'd had some alcohol and drug problems, and that he was now back, and and that's part of the rehab process.
Yeah, it's got to be vindicating to come out and be...
Well, yeah, Tom Carroll's a great example. He had some real issues, but he stood up and said, I am this, and took responsibility. And once you publicly declare that, you have to hold yourself account to your public.
That's true.
But anyway, he did that, and I was so proud of him. I cried during his press conference. Anyway, the Skins event was a contest where they put up all this money and a Jeep where like 50 grand or something, and you rode your wave. You could go out there and surf, with another guy, and you can ride waves until you got the one that you thought was your number one ride. And once you did, as you're coming to the beach, you raised your arms like that, and that's the one that they would score you on.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was called the Skins. It was revolutionary. It was so cool. And that's what Tom Carroll says in the movie. I mean, how's the Skins thing? Hockey, every heat.
And what an event to get on a roll with. Cash, ching, ching.
Went all the way to the 50 grand in a car.
Yeah.
And then a month later, he went to the Bells contest and did the same thing. And Aki was back.
Yes.
Let's look at that sequence. Can we look at that
Let's
sequence?
do it. And thank you for bringing that up. And then if you can remind me after this, I want to ask you about the challenge series that you did, because we're talking about a contest thing, and I know that we wanted to catch up on these sequences, but that must have had a huge effect on... I was just having this craziest, weirdest moment right there, because if you had told me when I was 10 years old, because as a family we would watch this movie, but this was always my personal choice of movie to pick, and we'd always get pizza when we did it, and I specifically this section. So if you told me that I was going to be, because I was behind you, so literally we're together in my room watching OCCUMENTARY, I kind of had this weirdest like chicken skin moment, like fully dream realized, I can't believe that we're doing this. This is insane.
Well, pinch yourself.
Dude, life is so cool.
Here's the thing. Like I think I was telling you that the greatest reward that I get, and I've lived a great life, and I've made a very fair living out of being a surf filmmaker. I'm not rich by any means, but I have, so many wonderful experiences, and I've lived a life so I'm trying to live life to the fullest, you know, and I've had more stories than you can poke a stick at. But when people tell me, like you, that my films have touched, moved, or inspired them, that's the greatest payment that I've gotten in this life. And I get it quite a bit.
I would imagine.
Like when I post them on Instagram, your movies changed my life, or, you know, made me go traveling, or da-da-da-da-da. And I just humbly accept those compliments like yours with such pride in the life I've had to live and what I've been able to share and touch, move, and inspire people with. And that's really, I thank you for that. You know, when I was watching that then, I was just reflashing on, as I have done lately, because I've been looking at a lot of the outtakes. I've been logging outtakes that I have of wild reels. You only use 1 foot in 20 in your movie. So I'd go shoot a whole film, and I've got 19 other feet that didn't get used.
Yeah.
Now 9 feet of it might be crap, you know, but there's 10 feet there that's just crazy that didn't make the cut.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've been looking at that period from the Green Iguana, I've got another 2 movies to make of Aki that are just sitting there.
Oh my gosh.
And I called him up and I said, I just been watching your outtakes, and you were a bloody good surfer, man. You were really a good surfer. But like I think I told you yesterday, it's all about a style of surfing that doesn't really get focused on or looked at much. It's all about how high can you go and where you can land it and all this. But really, that's taking you out of the wave, which to me, to some extent, leaves the spiritual aspect of riding a wave. You've disconnected yourself from that energy, which is cool. You know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. However, there's nothing better than seeing a great surfer ride a great wave with such total control and commitment and connection to that surfboard that's been fine-tuned to that guy.
Yeah.
And that's what he had at that time. He had really good equipment that actually made his, you know, surfing the way it was, which is rail-to-rail power surfing. And he was just flawless in all that. Like Tom Carroll said, 11 heats in a row, and what you did was, if you won your heat, you advanced, right? And he goes, what a contest to get on a roll with, catching, you know.
I love it. You could argue that section, Aki, today, he would still be winning that event. Like, honestly, there's not surfing that could even come close to how powerful, on rail, and precise of what he's doing right there.
It's timeless.
Yeah, it is truly timeless.
The boards weren't too long. They're still within the range that you're riding today. So what happened is that after that contest, Gordon and I wanted to hold an event that would allow Aki to get his measure with he hadn't competed in 3 years, and we wanted to see where he stood and if he could come back and actually compete against the best. So at the time, there were 4 surfers that we wanted to have. I came up with this idea with Gordon that we were going to go to a perfect wave.
Yes.
And we were going to take 4 surfers, 2 goofy foots and 2 regular foots. Gordon was sick of putting money into the contest. You got to remember back then that surf companies sponsored all the events. And he was sick of putting the money into the event where it was always, this is the day the final's going to be. Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock, so they could get the crowd to the beach, regardless of surf conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And he's paying these guys, he's putting like $200 back then, $100,000 or whatever in prize money and everything to put the man. He's sick of doing that and watching guys grovel in 2-foot surf for a final. I said, so we're going to go somewhere, like I used to do, and wait for the wave. So we're going to have a 2-week window, and we're going to have it. And the 4 surfers were Aki and Tom Carroll, and Martin Potter and Tom Curran.
Holy cow.
And we had a little bit of a hiccup there, and so one of the guys, couldn't make it, and we decided then that Gordon would pay the $25,000 to the what was it, the ASP then?
Was it?
The
yeah.
specialty event, and he could then invite 4 or whoever he wanted from their tour. So we chose the top 4: Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, Sonny Garcia, and Shane Powell. And then we had Aki, and we had wild cards. We had Luke.
Yes.
We had Margot, and we had Johnny Boy Gomes.
Yes, I always loved that.
And we went to the desert, and we ran what I consider the template for what today they're calling the Dream Tour. Go somewhere where there's waves, wait for the best waves, hold the best wave. The difference is we held our contest in 3 hours. 2 heats, 4 surfers each. Best 2 advance to a 4-man final. And everybody got the same conditions. In 3 hours, you could have the tide just coming in and going out, So you made it so everyone, the playing field was level.
Yeah.
Our judges were just 3 really good surfers, and they just look at the end of the heat and go, he ripped, they get through.
Like more of a feeling, like not like, hey, 6'3" versus a 6'5", more of like a, hey, he deserves it.
He needs a 10 point, he needs a combo of a wombat and a bloody skunk, And so it was just, down to earth, hardcore, genuine, authentic event.
Yeah.
And it gave Aki a chance to catch his measure. He had the flu the last day during the final. We waited 14 days, and so he wasn't that good. He only got 4th, but he got good wave. But he felt that he could do it. And that's the year that he then went on to make the Pipeline final. That was the year Kelly and Machado high-fived each other in the final.
Okay.
But Aki had advanced right through, So anyway, the challenge was designed to help him get that. But it was such a good idea, we did one the next year.
J-Bay.
And then we did one the following year. So there were a total of 5. There was the mystery left.
Yeah.
After that first year, the idea was to do 2 weeks at the left and 2 weeks at the right. And we did go to Africa. Machado couldn't make it, and, so it just turned out to be Aki and 6 guys instead of 8. But we had one. And then the next year we had one at Nauru again, which was the Psychedelic Desert Groove.
Yeah. What about 9 Lives?
Say again?
Was 9 Lives was one as well, right? Down in Ulladulla?
I'm getting to it.
Ah, sorry, Jack.
No. So, but anyway, I'm just going in order. So it went Mystery Left, which was the left, J-Bay, Psychedelic Desert Groove. Then we were going to have this boat trip in the Mentawai, but the boat thing fell through, so we just all met there. And because we couldn't pull the event off, we just went on a 5-day boat trip, which was really fun. And then the next year we had the 9 Lives trip. So those 2 shows were put together. So there was a total of 5 challenges.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of them because not only were they surfing, I don't want to say a contest, even though they were sort of a contest. It was more of an expression session. Again, the judges had different criterias of not numbers, but You know, if you're a good surfer and you're a judge, you can tell who's ripping.
Yeah.
You can tell who won the heat. You know, and that's how we had those three guys do that. And, you know, it was a great way for Aki to kick into that. Now, I did take Aki to Tahiti amongst all that.
I love this.
Out on the couch. And we have this friend, my art director, Graham Davey, has this friend named Carlo de Folondos. He's got this, you know, Hungarian something weird name. And so he calls him Carlo de Fon. And like the claw. Anyway, and he's as eccentric as can be. He builds guitars, and he surfs, but you wouldn't notice it, you know. He walks down the beach, he's got this crazy hair, this look. He's got leather and chains and, motorcycle boots, and just, he's like and he goes to concerts, and he's just a mad musician guy. But he loves Aki. And when he heard that we were making a movie, documentary, he goes, I gotta be in it. And I go, LaFong, we'll find a part for you. And so when Aki's coming off the couch, we go, wouldn't it be good to have a psychiatrist tell him that he needs to go get away and go surfing?
Oh, the inner spaceman.
LaFong, let's get LaFong. So we get LaFong, we twisted his voice in the poke down, and that's the guy who goes, I said, Aki, relax, take a trip. Tahiti looks nice. That's all we could get him to say without, ad-libbing. We did it about 100 takes just to get that, because he always wanted to go off on some sort of tangent, but we got one take there that worked, and
let's watch it.
We watch that.
Let's watch it right now. That is so good. Just hear. Yes. How did Punch?
So that's one of the sequences that, I asked my editor, let's try to stay in the water for the whole sequence, because I had so much footage, and they're all shot on different days. There's probably at least half a dozen different days. There's a little left we surfed out on the reef at Moorea, but mostly that was shot at Tapuna, which is a little left outside of Tahiti there. But it has really clear water, even though the water is so polluted. It's septic a lot in some cases these days. But it was a really favorite place of mine, because I could use a wide-angle lens, and I could also use sort of a tight lens, that was that put you right there. There's a couple of shots. There's a couple of my favorite shots, and I also have to acknowledge my good friend Pancho Sullivan, who I thought was such an underrated, great surfer. Pancho, with all due respect, I don't think he got the recognition that he deserved from a lot of people. But he was like Aki going right.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because he's in a lot of the search films, like Tripping the Planet. I mean, I'm trying to think, because that's what caught me so off guard, was seeing him and then realizing that Pancho was in this section. For him to have that moment with Aki, and then, I think it would be later in his life that then he went on to Rip Curl. Like, in a video sense, he gave so much to the culture. Like, I do feel like Pancho's very underrated.
But he's a great surfer.
And a nice guy, too.
That's why I used to love watching the sunset, And there's actually a shot there in that sequence where he's in Tapuna, he's got his arms back, but he's got his back right hand running it along the lip.
Yes.
Now, Rasta, when I took him there, And he had been influenced by the documentary. I'm sure you can understand why. But he wanted to do that poncho thing. And I got a shot of him that we used in Blue Horizon.
Wow.
And
what? I didn't know that.
And it's like, but it's a lot cleaner. You can actually see him running his hand on the falling outside of the lip. And my friend Garth Murphy came up with the line, Rasta's the only guy I know who can ride in the tube with his hand running behind him on the lip, sort of like a waterman. Like a blind man reading a code that only a waterman can understand.
I love that. When did Rasta come? When did you guys start working together with Rasta? Because he wasn't in the first movies.
Well, Rasta was a kid. He was another generation. A guy named Vince Lauder was the team manager at Billabong and owes a lot of credit for that talent scouting. And we started in Australia a series called the Junior Series, where we'd go around to each state and have a little contest so that we could check out the talent.
Yeah, sick.
And we'd go, we'll have one of him, and we'll have one of him.
That looks good.
And that's where Joel and Rasta got picked. And so I've been following them since they were about 15. And then when they were about 17, I did my first trip with Rasta and Joel, and I'll never forget Rasta getting in the car and says, "Can I play some music?" I go, "Yeah." So he puts his cassette on, and before the music, he goes, "You ever hear of this guy named Leonard Cohen?"
Oh.
The 60s poet, you know? And here's a kid, you know, in the whatevers, and he's like listening to...
That's a deep cut right there, yeah.
He asked me questions like, tell me, you ever seen that guy Jerry Lopez ride the pipeline? What did he ride like in the tube? You
yes.
know? This is a 17-year-old kid, and I'm going, this kid gets it.
Yeah, 100%, yes.
George Downing told me once, he said, you know, Jack, to go forward, you need to look back. You need to see where you came from. And I always kept that, and I always shared that with my young talent, saying, don't forget your roots, because your roots are where you've come from.
Yes.
And those are the things going to help you to go forward.
Honestly...
You know, it's always best, I believe, to live in the here, now, and present. But you can't have dreams in the forward, and you can look back at all the positives. You don't want to get hung up on the negatives. You leave the negatives at the train station and drive away. Anyway, that's my little...
I love it because when we talked about it, that's, I guess for myself, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I have the downtime, and I'm trying to learn from the people who made me fall in love with surfing. So, of course, obviously when we get back in the water, but the perspectives that you share, that's the gold. I mean, your experience, then you're able to pass it on. And I feel like surfing used to be that way, where you had to learn it off of somebody. And now it's kind of in this state where you can just kind of do it however you want. But it's so cool. I've been really grateful for this time because, I mean, just to get here and like literally watch your sequence, rap out about it, for me, it's like, it's the greatest treat, Jack. And I like your words on that. You do have to look back to be inspired to go forward. Because it's like, you need to be rooted in something, I feel like.
You know what I always ask people? They don't necessarily have to be older than me, but usually I always make anyone who's older than me, when I have a chance, I always just say to them, can you share some wisdom with me?
Yes.
You know? And you'd be surprised at what you get. It's you hear something that continues to help me. You know, I tell people I'm 18 years old with 52 years worth of experience. You know, because that's how I feel. I feel like I'm a kid still. At the same time, I have all this experience, and I think I told you last year I did a tour on the east coast of Australia where I talk story, did these shows where people would come. We had about, Newcastle, we had 800 people screaming with laughter with my special guest was Aki and Peter McCabe. But I had a special guest at each show. But every night, at the end of the show, it was always the young kids who would come up to me. Fathers would bring their kids, and people are going, is it for kids, or can I bring? I said it's a family.
Yeah.
It's just no swearing. It's just sort of a family. Anyway, and the father would come up with his kid, and he'd poke him in the rib. He'd go, "Go on, tell him." And the kid would go, "Oh, I really enjoyed it." and to me, that was like gold.
Yes.
Like I say, when people say they get touched, moved, or inspired. Look, I just want to tell you that the documentary for me was really the first ever documentary film. I mean, they made a movie of Kelly back in the day called Black and White. But it was just surfing and a few little bits of it, but you didn't really get to know him. And the documentary in the timeline of surf movies was the first movie that actually profiled the whole film of one surfer and told his story.
Yeah.
Just like Bunyip and Iguana and Sunfun and Sick Joy were the first ever surf movies that had a lot of art in them. It's those years in Hollywood that my whole goal was to make something different in surf movies. Something that had never been done before.
And maybe never been done since. I mean, they're so unique. I still feel like they are one of a kind, honestly.
Well, thanks, but they have held up the test of time.
Yeah.
To some extent. But the documentary was such a great challenge for me as a filmmaker to once again really get into storytelling. Before then, I didn't use, audio or something. I got a video camera for Sons of Fun and Sick Joy and had a couple little something things. But they were all to tell stories through the pictures and the music. Let the music be the form of storytelling. And I pick all the music from films. Not all of it, about 90% of it.
You got great taste.
And I listen to people, my music producer says I have good ears, and I can hear a song. But to me, often I'll hear a song, and I'll go, I see the sequence to it. Mm-hmm. I went to Hawaii. Mark Cunningham said there's a guy in Australia has a band, punk band, and his name Damien Lovelock, and I want you to meet him. So I went to his house. I'd just come back from Hawaii, filming, for a year, The Green Iguana. I was starting to work on it. And he says, I got this song I want to play you. It's called On the Blue Phone of the Green Iguana. And he played it for me, and I'd been wondering how I was going to make the movie. And the idea came to me that the Green Iguana can be this, these little islands on his back, and we can have Aki and all the different sequences on different islands. And my art director came up with the idea that you string them all together, golden ring, and we create this storytelling with the visuals and the art. And before then, there were no computer graphics. I tell you a funny thing too is that we got this program from this high-tech, these friends of ours who worked for this high-tech advertising agency that spent like $2 million on this computer, and they gave us the software that would allow us to create islands. So we go home with our little map that's just come out, and we put the program in and we start these islands, and then it'd take like a 3-day render, right?
Yes.
And we'd set it off, and we'd come back in 3 days, and the island would be upside down or something, so we have to do it again. So the islands in that movie took a lot out of us.
I love that. 3-day render, holy cow.
It was an education in, and that's the other thing I just wanted to share with you is that every movie that I made, I always tried to do something different. if you're making the same movie over and over again, you know what you're doing. You're not doing something that's...
You're competing with yourself.
I don't want to use the word here, but I could do an expression with my hands, but I won't do it. You're not advancing. So I'd always set myself a goal. Gordon's paying me, Gordon Merchant paying me to make these movies, so I'm going to learn something.
Yeah.
In the Psychedelic Desert Groove, I learned how to be a color grader because I wanted to know how to talk to the color grader when I go in. I want to push more gamma. I want to crush the luminance. I want to, I can talk to him and tell him what look I want instead of saying, "Oh, try that, try this."
Yeah, the vocabulary.
So every movie gave me an opportunity. So with the documentary, the objective was to try and do a real good story, but also to do reenactments. And that's where the bubble wrap,
yes,
the thing, and all that came from. Now, for me, in the documentary, my favorite sequence, I kept thinking, what's my best footage I've got of while I'm making this? And it came back, it was that period that I was in Simba with him, and I had such good memories of it.
Let's watch it.
But in the Green Iguana, a lot of those shots were cut in half.
Oh.
We didn't use the whole shot because it was high speed. It took so long for him to get way out the back all the way to here. So my editor would pick it up halfway through, and that's what was in the Green Iguana. And I went, I was working with my friends In Excess at the time, and I loved their remixes. So I said, why don't I make a remix of that sequence in this film? So what you get in the documentary is the whole shot. And also, the shots on a couple of mornings was when it wasn't as big as I wanted it, that I shot anyway, that he's still surfing nuts.
Yeah.
So you're going to see him in this sequence in a pair of black shorts, and then you're going to see him in an orange wetsuit. So those are obviously 2 different days, 2 different suits. But they're some of the best footage I think I've ever shot of Aki on a perfect left. And once again, that's Jack. Down the beach, shoot that shot, run to the next angle, go to the next spot, and then jump in the water and get something so that when I'm in the editing room, I can take people on this incredible experience and make you feel like you're there. It used to drive me mad when these guys would go down and stay at the beach at one spot all day, shoot from the same angle. And I'd go, man, you got to change your angle. And they go, oh, I don't want to miss it.
Kind of boards that Aki's writing through these sequences. Like you talked about his Rodney Dahlbergs that he had at Bell's. And in that one, that was like a completely different looking board right there.
Yeah. Yeah, he did ride some different equipment that he had then. It wasn't the best. He had he's one of those guys that could ride an ironing board. We'll tell you this, though. This is kind of classic. That when he turned up in the Northwest for Bunch of Dreaming, the first shoot, he had 2 boards. He brought this Nev Hyman made him this beautiful little board, and it had, the early ones, it had like carbon fiber strands, like 10 strands down the middle to kind of keep it together, top and bottom. And experimental board. And when I had a close look at it, it had a big crease right across the bottom in the middle of the board. So it was the first decent way to hit it, it was in the snap. And I go, hey, this board's going to snap, man. I don't have a lot of fiberglass resin here,
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I got another board, Jack. And he turns up and he pulls out of this bag like this pop-out that was one of the first pop-outs. There were two people, kind of like Surf Tech and this other Australian company. And it was an Australian company that had hired Alan Byrne, who was a New Zealand shaper, lived in Australia, but he carried on the channel bottom, the deep V channel bottom. And it was like a 6'2" pop-out channel bottom. Pop-out. Then I'm looking at this thing going, hey, you know, Narlu gets like 10 fits. And this is what you got to ride. So anyway, we'll save that one for later. If this one breaks, I'll ride that, you know. And so he rode the Nev for like 2 weeks.
No way.
Be really gentle with it, Jack. I promise not to put any pressure on my front foot. And if you watch Bundy Dreaming, there's some water shots where he's coming by me, and he's doing these cutbacks, and he's actually lifting his front foot off the board to the heel to show me, look, I'm not putting the pressure on the front foot, Jack.
No way. I think that's a shot in the intro of OCCUMENTARY. And I always tripped on that too, because I was like, dude, like, how is he doing this carve when he's taking the toes off? That is
because
so hilarious.
Because he knows that if he snaps that board, McCoy's going to kill him, right? So and that's what he was doing.
Oh my God.
He was being gentle with it. And so the last day, we go to this place called Turtles, which is a hot dog way. And of course, last day, Surf Beautiful, and he, you know, goes out and breaks the board. But it's the last day, so he's got to pull this other thing out. I swear to God, never ridden it before. It's in Bundy Dreaming, in the solo dreaming sequence. You'll see him, instead of an orange wetsuit, he's got a yellow wetsuit, and he's riding this, you know, solid white channel bottom. And he is absolutely shredding.
Oh my! I'm gonna go back and watch that. That is epic.
Go back and watch that sequence. Okay, so the next year for the Green Iguana, he turns up with 2 boards. One of them's this great, incredible Rusty. You know, Rusty made him some really beautiful boards over the years. Turn the thing over. It's got a giant crease right across the middle of the board.
What?
So this year I had some fiberglass, so I made a strip that wrapped around over the crease and held my breath. Then I pulled out the second board that as soon as I started getting it out of the bag, it started barking at me. It was the doggiest, ugliest, happiest board. He'd won it in a contest shaped by some, you know, 6th grade kid.
I love this.
Shop. And I just shook my head, you know. I just went, oh my God. Okay.
Like,
so I called Gordon and told him, he said, why don't I send over that new kid that you just signed up? I signed up Margot after seeing him surf at Pier one day. He was just about to go sign Rip Curl, and I said, we got to have him. Because his name was Margot, too, so I could see a character.
Yes.
You know me, I can see a good thing when I hear it. And I knew I could make a star. See, basically, all I did was make matinee idols out of the team.
That's amazing. Yeah, they almost became superheroes in your movies.
Well, that's what I tried to do, you know? A great surfer called Margot.
Yes. And he went perfect with Rocky. That was the dream team.
Oh, yeah. Well, so anyway.